All right, welcome everybody to our last session of the Playbook. We're here with our author, Nick Blevins. Thank you, Nick, so much for meeting with us today.
You bet.
I'm going to go ahead and start us with prayer. And then, Nick, we're going to just kind of dive into questions with you. We just want to kind of hear what inspired you to write this book and then kind of go from there. Does that work for you?
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. All right, let's pray. God, we are so thankful for this time to meet together. We're thankful for Nick. Lord, you just inspired him to write this book and put pen to paper and really challenged us in our different ministries and inspired us, Lord, to stretch ourselves in reaching our volunteers and building up. Lord, I pray that you be with us during this time. Help us think of questions if we haven't already. And Lord, be with us as we prepare for this weekend. In your name we pray. Amen. All right. So, Nick, if you could just kind of start off with what inspired you to write this book and how you did it, and kind of go from there.
Yeah, I it took me 10 years to write because writing a book's hard and I'm not actually a writer, so all the things. And so but when I set out to do it, so that would have been roughly 10 years into me serving on staff at a church and vocational ministry. And I had learned so much from so many other people, at that point in my ministry that I'd apply, I think at conferences or books or whatever. And volunteerism is such a huge part. I was the kids director, kids pastor at my church when we started it as a church plant 20 years ago, and then became the next gen pastor about 5 years in, and now I do other things too, like lead our operations and whatnot. But kids ministry more than almost any other ministry needs a lot of great volunteers. So does student ministry, but more than even other areas of the church. And so volunteers are the ministry. They're the lifeblood. They're the ones like if we don't show up, but they show up, it's probably fine. If we show up and they don't show up, it's terrible. Um, and that's true of every ministry. And I think what I was trying to do when I wrote the book was a couple things. One, I thought volunteerism is such a challenge in every church. It's one of the biggest challenges, but it's also one of the most important things too. Like if you can get it right, it's also one of the things that'll help a church the most. But it's not just one challenge. Like there's so many factors. The way I say it is there's so many factors that influence volunteerism. And my idea of writing the book was like, I want to address all of them and help people address all of them so that volunteerism can be a great thing, not a frustration. But then as I got into it, it's like, you know what? There's way too many factors. There's literally probably hundreds. What size is your church? How many programs do you do? How many people currently volunteer? What's the culture like in your area in terms of how busy people are in their own life and schedules? Do you run Sunday school? Do you not? Like, there's just, I could list dozens and dozens of factors that impact volunteerism. So, my thought with the book was, well, I want to hit the biggest ones and I want to put it in an order that would help somebody using this book, whether they were brand new to kids ministry or student ministry, or they've been doing it for 20 years and just want to make volunteer culture better. And so I kind of did. I still don't know if I did it right. I mean, like if I could choose, if I could have done it the way I wanted to do it, the book would have started with like the foundation stuff, like the mission and the vision and the strategy and the culture. And we would have built like building a house. We would have built the footers and the basement and the concrete blocks. And then we would have moved on to like the structure and we would have talked about that with the walls and the studs and the framing. But the problem is that's not how ministry works. Like you know what I mean? Like when you're there on a Wednesday and you don't have enough volunteers for Sunday, you don't exactly have time to read about the mission and the vision and the whatever or work on it. You can read about it, but you don't have time to work on it. So I started with like, here's how to recruit volunteers. Like let's recruit volunteers first because that will free up more of your time to then spend on these other areas. So that's kind of how the book came about. And then I end with what I would consider to be like volunteer hacks which people would love early. But don't get me, they would love it early. But my approach was more like let's get into the my wife started running 5Ks recently, which good for her. I will not do that in my life if I have a choice. Ever. I hate running. And it's kind of like for her running, it was good for her to do a bunch of those before she started getting into like what are the best shoes? How should I take electrolytes? Like I don't know how to run, so I don't know. I have no idea what I'm talking about. But there's parts where it's like, yeah, you can maybe do a little better if you have this shoe versus that shoe. You might your electrolyte intake, if it's spread out, might be better than if it's whatever. But it's like, let's just figure out, let's just run first. Let's just do a 5K and measure it. And so part of me is like, let's just recruit volunteers first. Let's learn how to recruit volunteers every week, every month, all year long. Then at the end, once you've built a good system on it, let's add in the hacks that are shortcuts. I mean, quite frankly, they're good and they're good, helpful shortcuts, but you can't live on them. Like if you're just drinking the electrolytes and wearing the tennis shoes, you're not actually running the 5K. So that's kind of why I wrote it, how I wrote it. I put eight, came up with like 8 game changers, which I know is cheesy, but it's the volunteer playbook. There's already the sports analogies built into it. Those 8 things to me, if there are 100 factors that are addressed in this book, which by the way, I'm holding like the not for resale copy that has like 50 errors in it after 3 revisions, by the way. That's another reason writing a book is hard. If there's 100 factors that I addressed in here, 8 of them are game, like they matter more than the other 92. And one of them is probably worth 10 or 15 other factors, in my opinion. So anyway, that's how I wrote it. That's You all read it, so but that was the approach. And my goal was like every church that leader that reads it is going to implement some ideas, have a better, healthier volunteer culture, have more margin in their schedule in their life, and spend time working on some things they'd love to work on but haven't had time to, you know, and not fret the 11:37 p.m. Saturday night text email. I'm not going to be there tomorrow. My cat needs driving lessons. I don't know, whatever. The excuses come in, you know what I mean? Whatever it is. It's 26 degrees. We need to go outside here and enjoy this great weather, Shannon. You know, Kristen, you said, what did you say? People were like, wearing shorts at 26 degrees. Like, wherever you live, like one of you said you're in Michigan. It's like you're hurt if the weather's too bad. You're hurt if the weather's too good. Like, yeah, we're going on the lake tomorrow. Sorry. So anyway, that was it.
Well, I think one thing we all kind of like came to the conclusion of, or when we choose our books, let's say, many of them are Kidman focused, obviously. And
Yeah.
as we dove into this book, I think that's what we looked at it as. But as we went through it, we're like, wow, this definitely could be a whole church perspective, not just Kidman focused. And I know that's what you wrote on the front of your book. It says a proven framework to help your church recruit, train. But a lot of us, as we're reading this, we're like, wow, this is not definitely not just KidMin only. This is something that can be applied across your church, your church board, on
Hmm.
how to recruit, retain, encourage, train, your volunteers. Um, so yeah, it's definitely not just KidMin. It's definitely a book that can be used across all ministries.
Hmm. Yeah, I don't feel like other ministries feel the pinch as much as children and students. Even students doesn't quite youth ministry. For good or for worse, a lot of youth ministries, you could have a large youth ministry with 100 students, and if you're not doing well, you can make it happen with 8 or 10 volunteers. It's not good, but you can do it. Can you imagine 8 or 10 volunteers in a children's ministry with 100 kids? You can't do that. They're coming to 2 services. There's 5 rooms. You know what I mean? Like it's like that's not even possible. So, I think it's the most helpful for kids ministry, and that's my context is where most of my stories obviously are about that. But you're right. It helps worship arts, adult small groups, whatever you call your like hospitality or engagement or guest services or whatever.
I think another thing too, as we were going through this, we were reading like not larger sections, but about 2 sections per week, the way you have it broken down. We
Hmm.
were like, man, we're like, this could be a whole class, the way your book is laid out. Like, not in a bad way, but a very
Yeah.
good way, the way
Yeah.
you have it set up. So very well written. And I can see the amount of time you put into this.
Well, it's
Um,
funny that you say that, by the way, because we do have it was a course before it was ever a book. It was
okay.
actually easy. It was easier for me to make a course than it was to write a book. Because I guess it's just easier to talk. Yeah, I can speak well about it better than I can write well about it.
Yeah.
And actually the early ones were on Zoom like this too. So it was like interactive. It was very helpful for me to write the book that way because I actually could engage with leaders like yourselves and get feedback and thought it helped me apply it. But the funny thing is with Ministry Boost, the company some of my friends and I started, we have courses. And if I look at this book has probably 7 or 8 courses that we've made that are covered in this book, but
Mm,
they were courses first before most of them,
gotcha.
before they made it in the book. And that's what's kind of funny to me is like one chapter of this book, like the training chapter, the coaches chapter, we're making three courses that are brand new just on volunteer coaches right now that are going to come out. And that's just one little chapter in the book. So that's where it's like, it was hard to write too, because like I could have written three times this much. You know what I mean? Like I could write a book just about coaches. So it's hard to like, what do you put in? What do you not put in? Whatever.
Yeah. Well, that's what like it. I don't know if you ever saw any of the videos of of our Zooms, but there were so many times where like, man, there was just so much to talk about. We read two chapters at a time, but there was so much to discuss because there was so much stuff that you wrote that was great. And we're like, well, how do we do this? How do we do that? Or what did you do this week that, he wrote about? And so much to put into action. So it was very well laid out, and your action plans or your strategies or your game plans, whatever the words were, um, allowed us to take what you wrote, put it into plan, and it was very applicable and very not easy because there were things that were like, oh, how are we going to do this? But
Yeah. Yeah.
put us
Simple but
into
not easy. Yeah.
yeah,
Simple but hard. Yeah, that's a lot
yeah.
of ministry, right? Simple but hard. I Yeah, and I'd love to hear what questions you all have. I do think the best, like you all blitzed it, it sounds like, read a couple chapters every time. There, in many ways, it probably was more written for like you'd work on it while you have it, and then you go back. Like it's like a 2 to 3 year install is what I would describe. Like 2 to 3 years would be a pretty good, like that's actually pretty quick to install everything that's in the book. And so now some of it can be done right away. You can start huddles in 2 weeks. You know what I mean? Like if you want. But yeah, so I would say and to just to encourage you all, it is more 2 to 3 years. So if you just chipping away at a chapter in terms of making it happen every 2 or 3 months, you're doing great.
So, guys, let's open up to some questions. What are some things that we discussed throughout these weeks that we came up with, or things maybe related to your ministry that you can ask Nick?
And if you want,
Nick,
if it's cool with you, you can put them in the chat too. Like if they just kind of want to get ahead or they don't want to forget it. I know I would forget sometimes.
Nick, I'm what you just said about 2 to 3 years of implementation. Thank you for that because now I can breathe.
Yeah, yeah. You have to, right?
Because
That's what
we
I'm
haven't at my church, we're a church of about 200 birth to whoever is 80 something
yeah,
years old and
yeah.
have about 45 kids in our kids ministry. And I was like, wow, I need to take like this. I can't do it as fast as we're reading the chapters. So
No.
thank you so much, first of all, for making it so practical. That checklist at the end of every chapter, I'm a checklist kind of gal, and
Yeah.
that was so helpful. But just knowing that as long as I'm faithful to keep working on this, and maybe about 2 or 3 years, we'll finally have it wheels on it. And we haven't had a really good volunteer onboarding process at our church. And so this is going to be really, really helpful in me establishing one and getting that up and running. And I really appreciate the wisdom and the encouragement and the practicality of it.
Good. And that's great. And volunteer onboarding is one of the most important systems to get right early because I always wanted a better analogy for this and I don't really have it, but let's like think of a river and it has lots of streams and there's maybe a dam system going on or whatever. This happens naturally in rivers because, water finds the path of least resistance. But if you were building a man-made river, you would do a good job of making sure the main river gorge was big enough and deep enough and wide enough, and the streams that came off of it were dug the right way to the right places, and elevation was a factor. And then once the water comes, it follows the system you built the way it's supposed to work. When you have a good onboarding system, volunteers tend to flow the way they're supposed to go, and they actually stick and they actually serve. And it's not magic, but it's weird how sometimes all of a sudden you're recruiting more volunteers, and all you did was improve onboarding. But what's happening is, unlike the river dug the wrong way, they're not getting stopped up by a dam that you didn't intend to create or branched off to a path you didn't intend for them to go to. So there's a world where, and my friend and business partner Kenny Conley is big on this. He needs to write a book just on this. Where a good onboarding system is a volunteer recruiting strategy. So yeah, spend time on that. That's a good thing to focus your time on because if you do that well, let me look. I see huddles here. Please talk about how you do huddles with multiple services and when the church does an all volunteer huddle. and don't have input. Okay, so huddle. This is a great question. This is another one we have a course on that we need to update. My ministry is going through this like a new version of this right now because we're changing up our huddle strategy. And huddles, like a lot of things in the book, you're going to find obstacles to them, and you have to figure out how to get around them. Multiple services. I'll just give you a bunch of ideas, and it just depends on your context. One barrier to huddles is not having the space to do it. We have that in our church. We just don't have a lot of building space for the size church we're in. And so that's tough. But like, for example, we have three services now, 8:30, 9:45, and 11. We're in a business park, so parking's not an issue for us. It's the one thing that's good. And our service is only an hour long, so we turn them over fast. There's no Sunday school. It's just three identical services back to back. But our 8:30 is really light attended. Like only about 16 kids come to that service, roughly. And so we don't use all our rooms. So we just decided this one room that's kind of attached to our elementary room is going to be where we huddle. We'll huddle before the first service if you serve or attend that one. So we'll huddle at 8:10 if you serve or attend 8:30. But if you don't serve or attend at 8:30, you're going to come to the 9:15, which is during the first service. Like the first service isn't over yet, but we're going to meet in that room that's not being used. And if you attend, it doesn't matter if you attend or serve 9:45 or 11, because in my church, if you attend or serve at one service, you should be attending the other one. Like we have a serve one, attend one agreement. And so, this Sunday, we're having all of our kids' team huddle, at those two times, whichever one works for them. So I think that's one thing you can do is you get creative about multiple times. Um, don't think that somebody can only huddle right before they serve. If they're going to serve and attend, it's okay if they huddle before they attend and then serve after, right? No big deal. We're expecting you to be there, right? So are you asking a little more of them? Does it feel like they're coming? Yes, but that's okay. That's part of what a good huddle thing does is, gets them there, gets them connected early. I think a all volunteer huddle is great. So like if your church does that and you don't have a choice in it, that's great. Just point to it. Hope your team's there. Um, I think huddles can be great with a small team, like every room does their own huddle. But huddles can be great with the entire ministry and it's a little bigger and it's a little more vision, right? To me, the core of a huddle is relational connection meets vision and like information and training. Does that make sense? So I actually think it's less prayer. This is going to sound terrible, but it's less prayer requests from the group because you can spend all 10 minutes doing that. We can send prayer requests over email and be praying for each other. And we'll pray in the huddle, but you don't want a huddle that's like 10 minutes of all of us spending a minute sharing prayer requests. That's not a good huddle. That's a great thing, but it's not a good huddle. Huddle is like it is a little bit like sports. It's like we got to go. 3, 2, 1, go Ravens. You know what I mean? Like I'm a Baltimore fan. It's energy, it's fun, it's upbeat. The 301 level of a huddle is putting some training in there, but just the 101, 201 level is vision, information. What are we about to what's about to happen today? What's a story of a win from last week? And let's pray together and let's go today and make the most of this opportunity we have with families. That's a huddle right there. And you are connected. It is a connection point and all that, but good question. Huddles with volunteers who have kids. So I think it's fine to have kids in the room playing. It's not great. It's a little distracting, but we're kids ministry people. We're used to it, right? Like it's not the same as the pastor's got to preach. He's like, what's going on here? We've built that muscle up. We can focus, now there's a point at which it's not working at all. Like the baby's crying constantly, it's like, okay. Again, this is more 301 level huddles, but like I know churches that'll have somebody who their volunteer job is they're watching the kids. Two of them are watching the volunteers' kids during the huddle for 15 minutes in this other room. Or maybe they do that before they even do their other volunteer job, So there's some ways around that, but I wouldn't hesitate. I mean, in our world, the kids are in the rooms during the huddle. Good questions. Huddles are a secret sauce. Huddles are one of the most important things for shaping a volunteer culture. And then the benefit is if they're late to the huddle, they're still on time for the service. They're still early for the service. What else you got? I'm
If there's
texting my wife because I can hear my dog digging into something. It's like,
So Jody kind of alluded to earlier that we had said that this is kind of more of a to get everyone on the same page, like all your leadership. How do you do that when you're, you know, children's ministry sometimes does not get invited to the table? Um, and so how do you get this to go like up the ladder of leadership? Because again, having these systems in place that you have talked about in this book are phenomenal, but then all of a sudden they go to a different ministry or a different thing in the church, and it's a whole different system or a whole different way to get a volunteer onboarded or trained. So how
yeah.
do you get this to become a church culture?
Oh, that's a good question. And I'm a big believer. It's funny. We just recorded the next episode of the Kidmin podcast. We launched kidmin.com a couple months ago, and Kenny's the host of that. And we just did one about new family retention because we're re-releasing this PDF. We have this free PDF about 16 gift ideas for first-time families. It's one of our most popular downloads. And in the conversation when Kenny and I were talking about it, we were talking about how, you might implement this plan just in your kids ministry because that's all you control. But ideally, you would implement it church-wide. And either you would do that from the beginning because you would work together with the other people in your church to do that, or you'll just do it so well in kids ministry, they'll be like, hey, we need to do that over here. So I think, Stacey, I think some of it's like you got to start with what you can control. And a lot of us, that's all we can do is what in our ministry. So just do it there really well. And hopefully, if nothing else, people will take notice and then they'll ask questions and then you can expand it. But I am a big fan of leading up as much as you can, leading out sideways, to other people that like student ministry or whatever other ministries are there and getting them involved because I'm always going to be like a church wide context is always going to be my filter, the hat that I wear. I'm always going to be thinking, how can the whole church do this better? However, I also acknowledge a lot of leaders are in a place where like they're not going to be able to have that influence. So I think if you can work with others to make it happen from the beginning and work on it together because they have buy-in too, and now it's harder. What do they say? If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go as a team. So it is harder. You'll spend more time and more work, but um, actually, you won't do more work because you'll divide it up, but it will take you more time. Versus if you do it yourself, you'll get it done faster. But do that if you can. But worst case, you do it when Kenny was at Mariners Church in California. As a huge church that during COVID they launched 5 campuses. They were averaging 12,000, I think, in attendance. And this is a massive church. He did exactly what we're talking about in this book to recruit volunteers there, and they recruited 400 volunteers in 18 months. Which again, that's a huge number, but it's a church of 12,000. So take that down to a church, of 1,200 and they recruited 40. You're like, that's still great. You know what I mean? A church of 120 recruits 4 volunteers. That's great. Right. So you can scale that no matter what the size is. But the point is after he'd been there like a year in their leadership team, they were like, hey, we need an emphasis on volunteers and recruiting and onboarding. And they're like, okay, what do we need to do? And Kenny's boss was like, we're doing whatever Kenny's doing because we've seen it. Like we've seen the results. So Kenny, just tell us what you're doing. Like what are you doing? So now sometimes, if we're just honest, leadership doesn't notice, doesn't even maybe agree. And those are hard moments, it's just the reality. But it's like ministry in general, we don't control everything. In fact, we control very little. You know what I mean? God and other people are making decisions that we have no control over, and that's okay. You be faithful with what you have, and hopefully, though, people will notice. People do, and when it's really helping them. Like if you're the ministry where it's like, man, that ministry's got volunteer. This is rare. Okay, so can hardly ever say this in the history of 20 years in church leadership. My preschool ministry is full of volunteers right now. Like they don't. There's no holes. Now is that going to be fleeting? Yes, that will not be true in like probably 7 weeks. You know what I mean? But like there's a moment in time right now where the rest of the staff at our church could look at my preschool director and be like, "Can you give me some volunteers?" Or like, "What are you doing right over there?" You know what I mean? And some of it's just coincidence, some of it's whatever. Our church is getting older. We actually don't have as many preschoolers as we do teenagers now, so there's some of that going on. But yeah, if you do it well enough, a good healthy church with good healthy leadership will see that and want to replicate it. And if they don't, okay, more for you. More volunteers for your ministry. What else?
So
Nick,
between your, oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Lynette.
Nick, I thought that your book was really well written and it was easy to follow. And it's almost like there are no questions because nothing was complicated. You put it out
Oh, good.
really well. And I tried hard to whatever the homework was, I tried to sort of do it. So which took time and some I'm not finished everything because there's a lot there. So
Yeah.
like Mary Lou, I'm really relieved that you said it's a long process. Um, but something I did wonder, um, from conversations with people, what do you wish you had included in the book? Is there anything that you feel, shucks, if you'd had another 10 pages, you would have added this thing
Yeah.
to...
Gosh, that's a great question. I wish I would have, I mean, this is just has nothing to do with helping you on it, but I wish I'd included more stories. It just creates a better reading experience and people learn more through stories than they do. Like we all learn more through stories than we do, through I'm a systems guy. I'm an engineer at heart. I went to, I went to school for this kind of thing. I worked for a defense contractor. Like I hadn't, in no world did I ever think I was going to work vocationally on staff at a church. So there's a part of me that's like, I'm a little bit more of a, you know, that kind of person than I am like the whatever. So, but I have them. And so I wish I told more stories. I think the people connect to that more. Um, I wish, I could actually what you have talked about, both of you and Mary Lou have said, I wish I could have illustrated early on more about how long this takes to do. Like 2 to 3 years is fast. You know what I mean? Like if you did it in 5 to 8, you're doing great. 2 to 3 years, you're doing really great. Now, and I know it can be done because Kenny, my business partner, I've been in one church for 20 years and two my whole life. He's been in like 12. And he goes and we joke that he likes to fix a good dumpster fire of a children's ministry. And so he goes in and this is what he does. Like if you wanted, I could share a link in the chat. I'll find it. You can follow along when he went to a church that he had never intended to work for. He moved to North Georgia a couple years ago. His mom was battling a second bout of cancer. I just put a link in the chat. And so they moved there. He started attending this church, and you know how it goes. He's one of the best kids, next gen pastors in the country, and they find out, and so then things oh, can you help us in our kids ministry? Can you lead our next gen? You know what I mean? Anyway, he felt like he needed to recruit 50 volunteers to accommodate the growth they were experiencing with kids and a new building they were opening. And so he said, I want to do a challenge. I want to try to recruit 50 volunteers in 90 days. Now, they only had 44 to begin with. So he wanted to more than double the team. And his 50 volunteers, this is a church of about 1,000 at the time, to put the context. So if you were a church of 100, this would be five. Like I always think it's important to scale it, right? Because five volunteers in a church of 100 is awesome. To recruit five volunteers in a church of 100 is great. So and to do it in 90 days would be great. So he wanted 50 weekly volunteers. So if he got somebody every other week, they only counted as a half. Does that make sense? So like it was a pretty high bar. And he did not hit 50, but he hit 47 or something like that. And he did more than double the team in 90 days. So the point is you can do some things fast. You can. And then he used exactly what we taught here. Now he mixed in some more of the hacks, like he definitely, took some shortcuts and things like that. And some churches, there's low hanging fruit, and his was one of those where they had grown a good bit but hadn't recruited enough volunteers from that growth. That's not every church. But the point is, like, I wish I would have illustrated that more that it takes time. Not now, don't take 10, 20 years, but if you can do it 2 to 3, that's really good. And then the other thing, there was another thought I had in there that I sort of lost. I had a friend of mine a good friend of mine, he bought books. He's at a really large church in Indiana, and he bought this book for like every one of their kids and next youth staff, which was very generous because there's like 50 of them or something. Like this is a huge, huge church. And we were having dinner when I was working with his church last year or 2 years ago. And he said something that made me think, I think I said that in the book, but if you're saying it, then maybe I didn't say it well enough. Which is this idea that when we're leading and recruiting volunteers, we need to do the best job we possibly can of casting a vision for how important this is for their faith and their walk with Jesus. This isn't about us. This isn't about doing us a favor. This isn't even about helping this church. This is about you and your walk with Jesus and your discipleship. And if you don't serve, you're missing out. God has invited all of us on mission with him. And what better way to do that? Now I'm biased, right? What better way to do that than in a family ministry where we get to influence the lives of kids and teens? How many of us grew up in a church where people invested in us, and that's why we're here now? Ton of us. Why not invest? What else are you going to give your life to? That's what I'll say to my kids. I'm going to cry if I keep saying it this way. As my kids get older, like my son volunteers in kids ministry right now. And right now he says he's going to be a chiropractor, which I think is hilarious. Great for him. And if he's a chiropractor, that's great. But I will tell my son, what more are you going to give your life to than the local church? Like, be a chiropractor. You got to make money. Maybe he's going to have a family. But serving on mission with God is got to be top 3 in your life. When I worked at Northrop Grumman as a defense contractor, it was God, my family, church, Northrop Grumman. Okay. And that was when I was a volunteer. It had nothing to do with me working on staff. So I kind of wish that I don't know if I did enough or not, but I kind of wish I got that in the book more, that like we have to do a good job of that because nobody, you're not going to recruit volunteers when it's like, hey, the ship is sinking, we need help. Or, hey, can you add this on the list of 53 things that you have going on in your life right now that you're trying to juggle? It's like, no, no, no. Push 50 of those things down and put this at number 3. And don't feel bad about asking that. Because, as Kenny would say, if you do this, give it a shot for 3 months and you'll thank me. And you can make that promise and you can feel good about it and you'll always be right. I mean, you'll always be, every now and then somebody will have something going on in their life. Maybe they weren't ready for it. Maybe the volunteer role wasn't a fit and they'd rather be in this other area of ministry. That's great. But how often do people regret taking the step that we push them to? Never. A lady in my church who led Sunday school and led me when I was a kid asked me if I would teach VBS when I was like 18 years old. I can't remember her name. I remember I knew her then, but she changed my whole life. And so like, would she regret that? No. If I hadn't said yes, how different would my life be? You know what I mean? And if I had said no, and then she pushed it again and asked me next week, and that was awkward, would that have been worth it? Totally. If I had said no and she pushed and asked me next year, what I'm saying? So I wish I would have done more um empowering of the church leader to be bold in the push to recruit people to volunteer, but to do it in this context of vision, not need, not, yeah. It's a good question. Like I'm reading the text here. The course you spoke of earlier, those available to purchase, it's ministryboost.org. The cheapest thing is membership because you get everything in one. If we don't use Planning Center to know where our congregation is serving, good question. What's the best way to find a prospect list? Okay, this is great. I have a joke that I say when I teach this stuff live. I'll joke that like one of the biggest challenges of recruiting volunteers is the church database because the worship team is using Planning Center, the kids team is using CCB, the student ministry is using a napkin. That's my joke. I like to crack on youth ministry volunteers. Although the truth is, it's probably more the worship team that's using the napkin than the kids student team these days. And you do have to have good data to do. Now, not if it's all relational. If you're a church of 120, you still need to know who's serving and who's not, but that's small enough that you can kind of know who you're going to be reaching out to and you can send personal emails. And it's not a big deal if that you find out they're serving. Like it's not as big. Like imagine I emailed all of you, and I know some of you really well, but I don't know all of you. And then Stacy, you write back, and you're like, actually, I volunteer already on the whatever team, and I didn't know you did. Oh, that's great. I hope you love it there. Definitely don't tell so and so that I'm trying to steal you for kids ministry. You know what I mean? Like it would be fine. But the database matters more when you start sending mass emails where you're merging in names. But this is what I would do. Most of us, see, I'm lucky in my church, I have the authority to make our staff do this, and I do. In fact, I have somebody that runs searches every month to make sure they're doing it right. And then she sends an email where things are wrong, and we all see it, so we know who messed up. So that, like, because otherwise people won't do it. Like, people do what they're held accountable to, right? Now, in most of us, our roles, we don't have that authority, but you can get it, you can make it happen just for once. You can go to your boss. This is my plan. I've got a whole plan to recruit, but I don't want us to be embarrassed. I do not want to email people that are serving somewhere else. I need your help making sure we get um, updated data on who's serving on what teams, at least a snapshot right now. Like, yes, I would love for it to stay updated all the time, but I need a snapshot. And what you could do is you can go around to every other person that leads volunteers in the church and who's on your team. Can you send me a spreadsheet? Can you make a copy, take a picture of your napkin? Can you, it's harder for you, but you go around and you get all those names and you put them in a group and you don't contact those people. You know what I mean? And you just, anybody you're going to contact, is not in that list. That's a good question. Yeah, life groups is a good way to start. Life groups are great too. That's one of the hacks that I think is at the end of the book. But if you can get your life groups, Sunday school, small groups, whatever it is, leadership to get on board with helping you recruit, that's a major hack because you can recruit them and then the life group leader can come behind you who is a volunteer because they're leading that small group, which means they're a volunteer, and they can push their group to volunteer. You know what I mean? Like they can be another voice saying the same thing you're saying. It's like kind of like parenting. You know what I mean? It's like somebody else tells your teenager what you've been saying for 2 years, and they're like, oh, okay, I should probably do that. What else?
Nick, I like what you just said about asking them to volunteer because of vision, not out of need. That, like, I need to print that and tape it on the top of my computer because that's a perspective shift because we typically try to recruit out of need. But
Yeah.
with the vision piece, that gives a whole other level of this is why I'm doing that. And I've always tried to tell people when you're volunteering in Kidsman, you are affecting the eternal destiny of a child. And
Hmm.
there isn't anything better you could do with your time.
I love see that's proof I should have put see that's definitely should have made it in the book more, obviously. I love using that question that Andy Stanley says, which is what is the faith of the next generation worth? We know the answer. It's worth everything. Right. So, and I will ask that. When we teach churches now, when we show up and teach this or train their staff, if I were my own church, our volunteers, other church leaders, I was like, use that question. Say, what is the faith of the next generation worth? Everybody that follows Jesus knows the answer. It's worth everything. You don't even have to have kids, and you know the answer to that question. If you believe, I mean, if you're a believer and you follow Jesus, you know the answer. And if that's true, and if it is worth everything, then isn't it worth our time? You know? And then the vision thing too is like some people do respond to need. It's your mercy, get gifts people, it's your Enneagram twos and nines, it's your, you know what I mean? Like there's a chunk of the population that does respond to that. But it's not the majority. It's the minority. Most people respond to the vision. Now, I do think this is one of the things we don't say enough. The perfect volunteer recruitment is where vision meets need. Because what happens in every church is a church could be like suffering for a lack of volunteers in kids ministry. And it's obvious, but it's not that obvious because every parent doesn't see every room. And maybe it looks like it's crazy when they're in there, but they just kind of feel like that's normal kids ministry. They don't know that there's a version that's more tame than that. And so, when a church is launching a service, let's say, well, now I know there's a need because I'm not an idiot. If you're launching a whole new service, it makes sense that you need more volunteers. and you're asking me to serve for vision. Like we need 50. We did this 2 years ago. We need 50 new volunteers to launch a third service. And we came up with that number just doing real math, on what we would need. And we used it from stage. It was the perfect opportunity of vision met need. Like here, we're launching a new service to reach more people, help them find their way back to God. And we're going to need 50 volunteers to do it across kids ministry, guest services, whatever you want to call that. Things like that. And so like the two together are great, but need by itself, yeah, is not great. What books am I reading? I'm reading a book. This is funny as you ask. Well, I'm about to read this book right here. Because I want to do a habits of the household. I want to do a parenting group on it. And then I got the workbook here. I've had it was recommended to me by Allie Evans, who's the next gen pastor at Life Church. I think she's the best leader I know. And she said it's been great, and they've done it with their parents. But this book called oh my gosh, what is it called? Let me look it up. It's on audio. I've been listening to it. It's not it's not like I wouldn't describe it as a children's ministry book, but it is a church book. It is about the idea that years ago in our country, it was a kind of like a Christian nation in a sense that was just very common, right? Like even if you weren't a regular churchgoer, it was just normal. And then there was a time when it's called Life in the Negative World, by the way, is the name of the book by Aaron Renn, Life in the Negative World. So, and the way he describes it is if it's life in the negative world now, the positive world, and he doesn't mean positive because it's better, whatever, but like was Christianity was normal and it was cultural. Then there was a world where it was like even, like it wasn't positive or negative to be a Christian. It was kind of just like, yeah, whatever. And now we're in a world where it's a little bit negative. Now it might be changing a little bit now. Actually, I feel like there's this kind of cool resurgence happening. But like telling somebody you're a Christian isn't exactly like going to get them to think, oh, you're a good person. You know what I mean? Like we live in a world now where, you work at a church. Like when I tell people I work at a church, I can see the reaction on their face. Like, oh, what do I say? What do I not say? Did I cuss? Did I, do you hate people that are not, whatever? Like you just all that's going through their brain or whatever. And so anyway, the book is interesting because it's about life in the negative world, like ministry in the negative world. And it's very interesting because I just feel like this is a way bigger than kids ministry, but I'm talking to our leadership about like my pastor and our executive pastor and stuff about like what are churches doing? Because some churches we're still doing like what my church probably does, which is we're probably trying to walk a middle road, if I'm being honest, from the front, not like once you're in, but publicly it's like we're very middle of the road. Think politically, think theologically. Now, are we? No, because theologically we have probably the same core theology that churches had 100 years ago. But some of that you wouldn't know till you got enough to ask us. Does that make sense? And there's interesting because some churches are now taking a stance where like, no, I'm going to be a little more vocal about our beliefs that we know people don't like. I think of Josh Howerton at Lake Point in Texas, and like he's way more vocal about things that are controversial. Now, is his church actually that different than probably like 70% of the other Christian churches in this country? No, but he'll say it on Front Street and he'll pick some topic that's very divisive. Now, is that great too? I don't know. But anyway, that book has made me thinking about that. And then the other book is that I finished, our team read it, was Unreasonable Hospitality. If you watch the show The Bear, which I don't, but if you watch the show The Bear, it's related to that. And he's been on podcasts and stuff like that. But it's a story of a restaurant owner in New York trying to become a Michelin 3-star and just how they wanted to have unreasonable hospitality that made them unique. And I loved it because it's like we're not a hotel, we're not a restaurant, but we're meeting new families every week. And if you read the book, the core of it is, in my opinion, it is unreasonable hospitality, but it's personal hospitality. That's what it is. That's the magic. And I love it because it's like, oh, that it's just cool. It's fun. He writes it in a great way. And our team took it with like, okay, how can we have unreasonable hospitality in our kids ministry and when new families come and things that make you like, wow, I can't believe they remembered that. Wow, I can't believe they wrote that note. Wow, I can't believe they called out. Like I just said today on a different call, some churches we're re-releasing this PDF with the 16 gift ideas for first-time families, like examples of what churches are giving to new families that attend their church. The churches for giving shirts and tumblers, and kids sometimes get like a prize cart, whatever, like that kind of thing. And I said, a lot of that stuff costs money, but you know what costs very little, like $1, is a handwritten note by the leader who had that kid that day, picking one positive trait about that kid and saying it to the parent. And how often in that parent's life does somebody say something positive about their kid to them? Like they believe it, they see it, the teacher sees it, the principal sees it, the coach sees it, but how often do they say it? Like not very often, and so like that's unreasonable hospitality right there. So that's a good question. Podcasts, I mean, I love but again, if I put the church-wide hat on, like I've always loved Carrie Newhoff's podcast, but I like Unseminary with Rich Birch. He's a friend of mine. We overhauled our whole new here because of things he says on there. Unseminary podcast is a great one. Um, and then man, there's a bunch of kids and next gen like student ministry youth ones that I feel like a lot of them come and go. It's hard to keep one in there for a long time. So that's more I probably hit topically, but I'm a regular listener of some more of these church leadership ones like Andy Stanley and Craig Rochelle's and Carrie's but I'm at the point now where uh I can't keep up with all of them. So it is very topical. Like I just see it in the feed and it's like, oh yeah, yeah. I want to work on my retention. Let me listen to that. I still listen to the Unstuck group is a great one, but again, these are more like church leadership overall, not Kidman. And I listen to a lot of football podcasts. I listen to way more football podcasts than I listen to anything else. Not helping me one bit with children's ministry, although it did make it into the theme of the book and it's free agency season right now in the NFL. So I've listened to a lot of podcasts over the last 5 days. It's it's like people say, what's your hobby? And I'm like, football. Watching it, playing it, coaching it, listening to talking about it. The next book you're writing, that's a really good question. Okay. Well, you all should tell me what we should do. Between me and Kenny, we have 10, 15 books that we want to write easy right now without even thinking about like what's next. And we need to figure out which ones to do first. I think the one we're going to focus on is actually a kids ministry book with a friend of ours, Amy Fenton. And Kenny and I have talked about writing what would be the equivalent of this book, but for kids ministry. Like imagine it's from scratch or put it in order. So that is on the docket. Kenny and I want to write one on next gen family ministry, like a combined kids students approach to family ministry. The idea that like one team. He wants to write one on being the next gen pastor. So they're related, but it's a little bit different. So the one's more like your job and the one's more like what it should look like. And then I want to write one on partnering with parents, the 5-part strategy that I talk about. Is it in this book? I don't even know. Is it in this book? I should know this. Maybe I have a chapter on it in this book. Do I not have a chapter on this book? I guess I don't. Yeah, I don't. That's funny. It makes sense though. There's so many things that couldn't fit in there. You know what it was also too? I knew people would read this that aren't doing kids and student ministry. Yeah, I call it a 5-part strategy, but I want to write a book on a strategy to partner with parents that goes over the 5-part strategy, has some other practices in place, and also just helps kids pastors understand it's harder than you think. So success is the bar is lower than you think. Not the bar. 20% of your parents doing something extra is actually pretty good. 30% is good. Partnering with parents is one area of ministry among many where you feel like you're always failing. And so I kind of want to, help alleviate some of that stress, but also give practical tools to help parents, you know. So anyway, that's but coaches and a bunch of things in this book will be their own book. Coaches, training, that's going to be their own book. Probably huddles. We'll probably do one on huddles at some point. That's a short book I think we're going to do some that are a lot short. This is 250 pages almost. Like these other ones, not all of them. Like the Kidman one will be thick because it'll be, everything Kidman. But the other ones
3 minute
will be
warning, just
shorter.
so you know. Sorry.
Oh, no, that's good. No, I was watching. Yeah, I have another call too. Yeah, I know the partnering with parents thing, you said you would love a book on that. I've been wanting to do a cohort too, like where we kind of work on it together, get a bunch of people. It's like it's like our coaching, except built around, that. And everybody I talk to loves the idea. The thing I have a problem with is our coaching is like 3 to 6 months usually, and people don't want to sign up for an 18-month thing. but you can't implement a partner. You can hardly implement 10% of a partner with parent strategy in 3 months and see the fruit, and I want to be in it. I want to, I don't know how to describe it, but like, I want to spend 18 to 24 months together and see the work, do the work, share the work, reap the benefits and share the stories. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. It's like lab research. Like I need, 10, 20 leaders to join me on a 2-year endeavor. And I kind of would love to do that before writing the book, right? Because I would have that to put, so I don't know. Good question. Last one, maybe. Oh, Kenny and I want to write the Contrarian's Guide to Kids Ministry too, and we will offend a lot of people because there's a lot of things that happen in kids ministry that we don't like, and we want to talk about them in a book. Actually, when we were brainstorming the Kidman book, we were like, well, we need to write about that, and we don't like this, and we don't like that, and it was like we need to write a whole other book that is all the things that are very popular that we disagree with, which is probably not the way I should end the call, but that's another one. That's another. Don't hate me if that comes out and you disagree with half the book. But like writing your own kids ministry or writing your own curriculum, yeah, there's just different things. Like you could do it, whatever, but like we have some contrarian opinions on things. Um, yeah, there's a lot. I shouldn't say anymore because I don't want to then make enemies here at the end of the call. You'll tell me when it comes out, you'll be like, yeah, I actually agree with you, or no, you're stupid. That was ridiculous.
No, I think that'd be a good idea. Maybe.
Maybe. I can tell you, I have a list of some of the ideas. One of them is writing your own curriculum. It's not that people shouldn't do that, but it's just like you spend so much time doing that, you can't recruit volunteers, you can't partner with parents. Like that's one of the areas you can outsource. And can you really write a curriculum better than some company with 50 staff on it? Like you're better off editing, than writing from scratch. But some people love it. So it's kind of like it's like a pastor that can't teach. They don't want to do it, right? So I mean, it is a personality thing, but some folks should end up actually writing for curriculum more than being a kids pastor, because being a kids pastor is more about recruiting volunteers and building that. So that's one. I have other ones. Kenny hates, this is a silly one, but Kidmin is the short term for kids ministry, and Kenny actually helped create it. Obviously, that's a fun fact for you back in like 15 years ago. And he doesn't love Kidsmin or where it gets said that way and it sounds different to Kidman. So like but that's not really the control. Like we're big on weekly volunteers. That's not a common kids ministry thing. In fact, some people don't like that idea. Um, so there's some things like that we would put in there that some people would disagree with, I think. So it's not just contrarian, I guess. Some of it would be like, we just don't like this. You know what I mean? Like the don't do this. Don't do this in Kidman book, I guess, or whatever. Well, thank you all. I know we just went over a little bit. And
That's okay.
I'll put my email in here, but it's easy. I mean, just email me at nick at any of my websites, ministryboost.org or my name or whatever. Um, if you have any other questions or anything I can help with.
Yeah, well, we thank you so much for your time and for this book. Like I said, it really helped a lot of us, and a lot of us dove right into your challenges and things and recruited even volunteers. And it was a great book, Nick. You really challenged us and made us think outside the box. So we appreciate you and what you put pen to paper here, and it was great.
Well, good. I'm glad you liked it. And it would help. I would love to hear too if you've recruited volunteers and what that looked like. And you know what I mean? The stories. I love the stories. The most helpful thing for me is if you leave a review on Amazon.
Okay.
I've learned how important that really is, and how much it matters for people finding. Because like I know that people in our world, in the kids ministry world, we're all so connected, and you do things like this, which is great. But there's so many other volunteer leaders that don't lead kids ministry that have no idea, and I'd love for their churches to benefit from it too.
Yeah, yeah. I'd be happy to do that. And leaders that are watching this live and later, if you guys could do that as well, that'd be a great help. Nick, if you don't
We live
mind,
in the world of Chat GPT too, where you can say, "Hey, I read this book. It's this. This is what I liked. Write me a review." You know what I mean? Like,
copy and paste.
yeah, yeah. That because I know for me sometimes, like, how do I say it?
Right.
Like I've reviewed Kim Botto's book, and I'm like, this is amazing. Like every
Yeah.
church, every volunteer needs to read this, not just somebody. So how do I say that? All that, and I use Chat a little bit to help me write her review, but it was
Yeah.
all my thoughts. Like it wasn't anything made up. It was all my stuff, just packaged.
Yep. We loved her book too. We read her book 2 books ago, I think it was.
It's great.
So, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. But hey, would you mind closing us in prayer for today?
absolutely. Let's pray. God, thank you for these leaders and the churches they represent. They're your church, expressions of your church. And God, we are so grateful to be on mission with you, especially knowing that, man, we can't do it. How can we help? We're going to mess up, and you know that. And yet you designed it this way. We somehow are your plan A to reach the world and to spread the news of your son Jesus. And we're humbled by that. And God, I pray that the leaders on this call realize the magnitude of that call, but at the same time, it's because of Jesus, that it's not actually not us and our efforts. And here we are talking about all the things we can do to recruit volunteers and build a healthy culture, and we can. And I pray that they'll do that and take these steps. But we also know, God, you're the God of the harvest, and we pray to you for the workers, knowing that there's few, but I pray you give us the boldness to push people, the courage to say things, to ask them to serve, to ask them to reprioritize their life, to ask them to serve until uh, forever, basically, even if they change roles or teams, because what greater are they going to give their life to than to your mission? I pray they would see that. And I pray you'd help these leaders have patience as they implement these ideas and know that it's a long process and know that it's ministry. So perfection is not really going to happen, but there can be progress over perfection. And I pray you'd send volunteers, send them workers. Um, and I pray that we would serve them well and be ready for them and onboard them well and care for them and get to know them and connect them in a way that they hadn't been before, and their lives will be changed and they'll pass it on. And we pray for the families and the kids and the teenagers that this is going to impact in the churches, but also in the communities around. And I pray that they take steps towards you and their kids take steps towards you and make a decision to make you Lord of their life. And we ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you
Thank you,
again so much,
everybody.
Nick, for your time. Really appreciate
Sorry we
it.
went long.
Oh, that's okay.
See y'all.
All right, have a good day. Thanks,
You
guys. Have
too.
a good one.